B'nai Or, and to lots of different kinds of folks in different sorts of ways. Politically right and left, theologically right and left, Jewish practice up and down in all different kinds of ways. That was different in Gainesville than it would be where I live in Newton, Massachusetts now, where if you're going to be more like that, you're going to be a Temple Shalom, and if you're going to be more like that, you're going to be a Temple Avoda, and if you're going to be more like that, you're going to be at Bethel. I'm guessing that Gainesville is somewhat closer in its own way to Gloucester than Newton. Duh. So part of that was there in some kind of way. I wanted to, in thinking about that, wanted to riff a little bit from what Rabbi Feld was talking about in terms of folks who say we're all Jews by choice, and in some kinds of ways lamenting that, and in some kinds of ways offering a bulwark in the face of that. And I want to say that I can find myself lamenting that too, and wanting bulwarks about that too, I suppose. And at the same time recognizing that we really are living in a time of breathtaking kinds of choices. Peter Berger wrote that book 30 years ago called The Heretical Imperative. Talked about the difference of what it meant to live 300 years ago, or maybe even for some of us 100 years ago, and where we live now in terms of the kinds of choices that people find in front of us. What does it mean to be part of living a Jewish community where we are in fact making lots of different kinds of choices? And how do we live with that, and where is that coming from? The puzzle that I had in front of me in my years in my shul in Gainesville was, how do we be a community for everybody and also be something in not just anything? Part of that was saying, I suppose, that the glue isn't just halakha. If someone would have asked me to finish the sentence, the glue that holds us together is, right? Could be an interesting exercise to hand out cards to all of you and have you complete the sentence. The first word that came to mind to me was community. Very, very quickly afterwards was the presence of the holy. Not to use the G word, you know. We haven't said God yet here, right? And the word that would be there right together with that, maybe even before the G word, would be Torah. But what does it mean to be a community? What do we mean by community? What claims do we have on one another within community? Is that prize that I want to keep my eyes on in some particular kind of way. The task, and that's not even the right word, the privilege, the much of the time, the challenging delight of being able to figure out what we mean to one another and how we live with one another, what we do about that, and how we listen deeply to lessons that have been coming for a very, very long time about how to do that. Is at the heart of what I would look at as being part of a Jewish community. And as much as I ran to a school that didn't demand that I be Orthodox or conservative or Reformed, and as much as I'm delighted to teach at an institution that has colleagues and students who are all of the above and none of the above, the opportunity to be in a community that can really embrace a great breadth of Jewish living and Jewish practice without having to sing conservative movement cheerleading songs. I don't remember them that well, but you know, that being able to be part of that. There are things that we got in that shul in Gainesville that we wouldn't have had we not seen ourselves within that particular context. My time is up. We'll continue if you got things to ask us about.
Thank you very much. So we're going to see how this works to distribute at least these initial questions, and then I guess there are. Sure, if he's qualified. Look, we are going to have a chance to sort of debrief this, to talk to each other, to like take next steps. Our opportunity now is to sort of ask questions and get some responses. So I just thought this would help maybe in focus, and then after we get some responses to these, if there's a way to combine, then we'll have sort of a more open Q&A. Okay? Good? Are there last cards that we should collect and sort of? Yes. Good. All right. These. One of you is talking, someone else can sort of. Anyone who feels can take a minute. If we can just take 30 seconds and allow our panel to sort of look at some of these and.
Okay, well, I'll start with this.
Right.
So somebody asked me about my experience as a rabbi in Israel, and asked what is the conservative movement's approach as to who is Jewish in Israel. And can I just say that's a really loaded question? And asked if I performed marriage in Israel. So I'll answer the second one first because that's easier. Yes. But perhaps I should unpack it just a little bit. The Israeli law on personal status law does not have any provision for marriage, for what we would call a civil marriage, first of all. When you want to get married, you have to go to the appropriate desk in the Ministry of Religions, in Misrad HaTatot. That means that if you're Christian, you go to the Christian desk, and if you're Muslim, you go to the Muslim desk, and if you're Baha'i, you go to the Baha'i desk, and if you're Jewish, you go to the Jewish desk, and the guy at the Jewish desk is going to be this ultra-Orthodox guy in a beard and, hat and all that kind of stuff. So what has happened is there is there's an entry, an item in the Israeli personal status law that says if two Israeli citizens get married outside of Israel in a civil ceremony and come back to Israel with the marriage certificate from the authority from some country outside of Israel, the Ministry of the Interior has to recognize them as married. So that was the opening. And the way this works in the Masorti movement is we do the chuppah in Israel. We have congregations. We've got rabbis who have raised kids in congregations. We do a chuppah in Israel, and then the couple goes on a honeymoon to Cyprus, where there happens to be civil marriage. And they actually have, the truth is, if Israeli law changed, the Cypriot economy would tank. Because there are entire resorts, I swear it's true, entire resorts where the menus are in Hebrew, and the Cypriot Greek wait staff speaks Hebrew, because all of these young couples are going to Cyprus to get married. So that's how we did it. Was that we would do the chuppah in Israel, and then they would go to Cyprus, and they would get the marriage certificate, and then they would come back, and they would be registered as married by the Ministry of the Interior, but the rabbinate would not have any record of the marriage, and nobody really cared that the rabbinate, the chief rabbi's office, rabbinate, or the Ministry of Religions would not have any record of that. Because the point was to be registered by Misrad Apnim, by the Ministry of the Interior, because that's how you get the young couple's mortgage to buy the apartment. That's kind of that's what that. So that's that. Who is a Jew? So on one level, if you're asking on the level of matrilineal descent, I can tell you that in the Masorti movement in Israel, it is simply matrilineal descent or conversion, and that's it. Again, the phenomenon of intermarriage in Israel is so rare between Jews and non-Jews that nobody is really dealing with this on any kind of a communal or global level right now. But of course, the real question in Israel is not so much who was a Jew, but who was a rabbi. Right, but I'm not going to answer that.
I thought we had enough challenges in this community.
Yeah, you think you got sorries? Try being a female rabbi interesting.
A couple other questions on the notes here. We're asking about just brass tacks policies of what happened in a congregation in terms of participation by non-Jewish members of constituent families. So a few things here and there. In our synagogue in Gainesville, households were affiliated members of the synagogue, and any Jewish person could be a member of any Jewish person's household could be an affiliated household of that congregation, and that would include all the members of that particular household. What could or couldn't somebody do? Jewish and non-Jewish adult members of the congregation would be involved in committee work within the congregation, in various kinds of task forces, in adult education, in committee work for education of the coming generation. I don't think we had a rule that you had to be a Jewish member of a family in order to be a member of the board. But all of the members of the board were Jewish. Already in the 80s, it was a fairly new thing that you could be a member of the board or a president of the congregation if you had members of your family who weren't Jewish. Today, that's more of a commonplace, but that was unusual for many congregations then, and was already something that was happening there. So officers or board members, by custom, if not by rule, were all Jewish. And in terms of ritual practice, you had to have 10 Jews over the age of 13 for a minyan to be considered a minyan for public worship. That meant that when there was a bat mitzvah called and the services were called for 10 o'clock in the morning, and right at 10 o'clock in the morning there were 6